as I remembered earlier, it wasn't a good place. It was polluted, terribly polluted. Came from the paper mill in Oconto Falls. The pollution would, I don't know what it was called at the time, but it was pollution, would run down the river and get into the pond behind the Stiles Dam and ferment and get worse and worse, and then it would come downstream. And the river was green with slime, long stringy slime. There'd be slime there that was hanging on the rocks and logs, probably 6, 8, 10 feet long, just green, especially in the summertime when the weather, the warmer it got, the more slime there was in the river. And it was very bad odor. It would burn your eyes. It would, I can remember it peeled the paint on our house several times. It got so bad. The house would get painted, and within 1 year, if it was one of the bad dry years and the pollution was bad, the paint would peel and just curl right up on the house. I'm sure probably across the river too. We were more on the river level, as DeTage Farm was a little bit higher up, so I don't know what it did on their side of the river.
I think my understanding was kind of like in the morning, if you had a morning mist or something, that would come up, that would get to the house and settle on the house, and that's what
would do it. The house would turn kind of brownish color or brownish greenish color, and the paint would just blister right off.
Wow.
And it was potent, as I can remember. But then after several years, the Department of Natural Resources and environmental people started getting after the paper company, and it cleaned up, and they drained the Stiles Pond behind the dam and let all the water out of it except the river channel that they had to let through, and let all the pollution in there settle and dry out, and it formed a hard crust in there. The pollution is probably still in there, a lot of it, but it isn't in the water. It settled and made that hard crust, and then when they reflooded it, everything stayed in the bottom and didn't float up and continue on down the river. And now the river is as good as any river around, I guess. A lot of fish in the river, a lot of wildlife, a lot of recreation, canoeists, tubers, whatever, using the river.
So anything else about the river? You fished there?
Fished there, hunted ducks there, trapped there.
Tell me about trapping a little bit.
Well, Joe Jr. and I used to trap in the river quite a bit. We'd take the boat up to Stiles and put it in the river and trap down as far as the bridge there, or our place, or a little bit below, and then next day go back up and check the traps and do that. And just, I don't know, just something to do.
You're trapping for muskrats?
Muskrats, yeah. Skiing in the wintertime, I guess it was your farm, on the hills along the river there, and going down the hills and out across the river. It was froze, and that was your, I don't know what you'd call it, landing strip, more or less. Tobogganing and skiing and sledding. In fact, I even got a scar on the bottom of my chin here from that yet.
That's that, right?
We'd build kind of ski jumps, a little bit going down the hill, halfway down or so, and sometimes you didn't make her standing up. You went head first, and the crust and the snow kind of bites on the chin.
Yeah, that's great.
When that started, the sea lampreys came in through the St. Lawrence Seaway into the Great Lakes, the ships, and then they attach onto the fish and suck the blood out and kill the fish. And they started trying to control them. I don't know what year it was. It was probably in the 50s maybe, or 60s. I don't really know. But they put electrical weirs on all the feeder streams that went into Green Bay. And what that did is the sea lamprey would go up into the streams to spawn, and they made a funnel type thing out of wire and electrical charges in the water that would direct the sea lamprey into a box or a trap. And they had to check those every day and clean them out and so on. That was the beginning of the sea lamprey control. He worked out of Oconto here for quite a few years, and then he worked out of Upper Michigan for a few years. Well, I think they probably worked with the electrical thing for probably 10 years or more, and then after that they went to chemical control, which sometimes worked and sometimes was a disaster that they didn't want to admit.
Killed other fish too.
Kill everything in the stream, fish and anything that was growing in the bottom and living in the bottom, and if somebody made a mistake or whatever, but it happened, I know that.
Wow.
But they still do control of eels, lamprey eels in the Great Lakes, but it's nothing like it was before because they have it under control pretty much now. Put everything into this box or trap, they called it, which was probably 8 feet long and 4 feet wide or something like that, and all the fish that came up the stream would bump up against this electrical current that was all the way across the river. It had it completely blocked except for this trap, and they would gravitate towards this funnel that went into this trap, and then they would go in there, and then the guys would get in there and sort the fish, take the fish out, throw them upstream, or dump them upstream so they could go upstream and do their thing, but they'd keep the lamprey, get rid of them. The way you could walk in the water that was electrical charged if you had rubber boots on, hip boots or waders, and you wouldn't get anything, but you could put your hands in the water like this, and in the electrical, and you wouldn't get anything, but as soon as you started moving your hands apart, the current would get tingling stronger and stronger and stronger, because if it was a little fish that could go through it, but a bigger fish would, they'd get too much current and they'd go swim into the stream. I can remember doing that.
I'll be darned.
If you got too much, if you fell down in the current, you were pretty much a goner until you drifted downstream and got out of there.
Really?
Because if you got your hands like 6 inches apart, you could hardly stand it. It's a shock already.
Really? Isn't that something?
It was 120 or 220, I don't remember which, that went into the water.